4. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the EG Pot of Thunder with your boy, the young light-skinned Keith Sweat, here with my guy, Ryan McCormack. He's entering his 10th season as assistant coach and recruiting coordinator with UMass Dartmouth. Since joining UMass Dartmouth, McCormack has played a pivotal role in recruiting several of the Corsairs' key players from around New England, New York, Louisiana, and Florida. In 2021, the Corsair offense was ranked first in MassCat, first in New England, and 26th in the nation in total offense. And in 2022, they were the MassCat champions for the first time in program history. During the regular season, the team possessed the 15th highest powered offense in the nation, averaging 42.1 points per game, and had the best defense in MassCat, allowing only 18.8 points per game. They averaged 542 yards a game, second in the nation in total offense, and they end their season the first round against Ithaca College. That is a lot right there, my guy Ryan. So how does it feel to be a big part of that turnaround of the UMass Dartmouth football program?
I think the biggest thing was we always had great coaches here. It was, you ever talk to any coaches at the higher levels, FBS, FCS, and even our level, it's all about the horses. At the end of the day, obviously you have to have good coaches and good infrastructure and good administration, and we do. But the biggest piece is having the right horses and then having the right team chemistry. And so it took time to figure out what that looked like athlete-wise, mentally, physically, emotionally. And then once we started to get the right horses in the seats, it started to build.
So this is your 10th season coming into it. Around what season do you think you saw that trend around? I seen in the statistic wise, from losses to wins, it was around 2016, 17, where you had that flip.
Yeah, so I came in late spring of 14 when I got hired, and we already had a recruiting coordinator in place, but he was kind of on cruise control and kind of semi on his way out. And then, the first year I coached D-line with Coach Faniel, our DC, and that was a great experience. And then our OC just liked my work ethic and came to me and said, hey, I'd like you to come over to offense. And I did. And so the 15 season was a solid season. I think we were 5-5. But it was like you could see we're missing pieces of the puzzle. And so I was like, we have good players here, but we're missing the depth of good players. We had good coaches. And so it was like building blocks. Mm-hmm. And so after that season, the guy who was the recruiting coordinator then left. He left UMass and moved on to different pastures. And our student assistant, Coach Robat, had left to go to Merrimack. He was a really good coach, and he was a good guy, and he's still a close friend to our program. And so we went to Merrimack, and he was a good resource to kind of pitter-patter off of what was out there for talent. And so at that point, I got elevated to the recruiting coordinator. And that's a job I did at Salve eons before. And so I was excited because now I was given a lot of autonomy to run recruiting, work very collaboratively with our coordinators, which was great because they're really smart people. And so they said, hey, what are you going to bring to the table that's different than the last guy? And I said, well, my experience. And I'm not too proud to if I don't have the answers, go find the answers from really smart people. So that's what I did, and then used their resources as well. And so we collaboratively as a team really kind of started to lay the groundwork. We got players like Stephen Gaychuk, and he was a hidden gem and really was a big time steal.
Is he from Rhode Island?
He's from Tiverton, Rhode Island.
Tiverton, Rhode Island. Yeah, because that's a big thing I feel like with D3 in the recruiting process. You have to find those gems that are going to, blossom in your program that the other schools are going to be like, damn, I miss on that dude.
Yeah, so he was a kid that when he came into high school, he's very athletic. At a very small high school, Tiverton's not a very big place. And he was very under-recruited because he was lean. He was, not as big as he was at the end of his career, size-wise, obviously from the work he did. But he was always he had the talent. People missed him on the radar.
So how someone like that, how do they stand out? So, they're unappreciated, especially in a small state, Rhode Island. And back then, that's kind of before, the Quiddy blow up. How, and the Rhode Island, getting eyes on them. How does someone like that, Tiverton, he said his frame isn't that big. They have dreams of playing football in college, but, no one's really reaching out to them. Someone like a Josh Allen, no one reached out to him, but he has that frame. Someone like, say, even like me or something like that, I'm only 5'7", 5'8" in the best day. How's someone like that going to reach out to you? Because I know you do have players in UMass Dartmouth right now who aren't the tallest. So how are they reaching out? And how do you see those players even from from the jump if they're not really being recruited like that?
I mean, for me, I do things are different than other people do. Like years ago, coaches would go to a lot of Friday night games. And the trend has become where a lot of guys, the younger guys now in recruiting and coaching, are doing camps, and everybody's doing camps, and they're looking on like Huddle and looking at Twitter. And if they saw on Huddle the kid was 5'7", they'd probably be like, I'll take the kid that's like 6 feet, right? I would go and see how this kid interacted. I would want to see on a Friday night game, like, is this kid really a competitor? If he come off the field, if he was to get beat, does he like have short-term memory and go back out there and dominate? So I want to see those little attributes you don't see on just like game film. You can see it watching game live. And that's something I was taught by Coach Cohen, Liam's father, who first guy I played for, first guy that hired me. And then his DC coach Bell, Arthur Bell, who's also a really amazing coach. They're both in the Round Football Coaches Hall of Fame. So they were both big-time college coaches for me that taught me a lot. So they always are very big on Friday nights. They went to games and they would look at kids. And this is how they made Salve in the 90s very good. They would do things people wouldn't do to go find hidden gems. And so I took that in my own way and then added the new age stuff of Twitter and Huddle and like used it, melded it all together. And the biggest thing they say is build relationships with high school coaches, and even places that are really small that might not have a kid for years, but eventually everybody's going to have a guy. And so I'm looking everywhere. And people say, well, why'd you look at, EWG, or why would you look at like Tiverton, or why would you look at like North Smithfield, much smaller schools? And I said, well, they may not have a team as good as or deep as the Hendricken, but they have an individual player. So
what's like your schedule? Like, say this is football season. This is going to come out a little bit right before the National Signing Day. So what's like your schedule like during the football season, or maybe when's your season start? So you're talking about Friday Night Lights. Mm-hmm. Are you going to Hendricken, like a Hendricken game all game? Or are you going there for a quarter? Then you're going to go to EG. Then you're going to LaSalle. Then you're going to go to Saints.
It depends on the week and what games, what the matchups are, because you're trying to see an individual kid against a good team. See like how they handle that adversity. If the team's like stronger potentially, or so I try to. And sometimes I see that kid multiple times, so I'll see parts of games. So I'll try to stack them if I can. So like, let's say there's a game on Friday at like 6 o'clock. I'll hit that 6 o'clock game, and then I'll be there for half an hour, take a bunch of notes, take some videos, look at some things, get as close as I can to the action to like trying to figure out things, and then I'll hop in the car and I'll head to, another high school I've tiered out. I mean, there's been times where we've played at home at like a Saturday at like 4, and so I'm not on campus till like 12 or 1. So I'm trying to hit a 10 a.m. game that morning, either in Connecticut or Rhode Island, because I have Connecticut as well. So I'm literally doing games Friday nights, games Saturday morning, then heading to campus to get ready for our game day visit recruits, and then get them set up with their tours with our tour guides and our players that are out that week with injuries to help out with the tours of the kids. Gotcha. And then we'll get ready for pregame, and they meet us back. The tours bring them back to the stadium for pregame.
So you're saying you have Connecticut as well. So you have, so your states are Connecticut and Rhode Island for recruiting?
Connecticut, Rhode Island, Florida, Louisiana. I also have South Carolina and New York. So we actually break up New York now. Me and our OC, he's kind of dabbling it down into Long Island. I'm taking more Westchester, those areas.
So do you have a coach for every state? UMass Dartmouth?
For right now, we're really focusing on New England, New York, New Jersey, PA, parts of the East Coast, and then pocket school areas. We'll look in certain prep schools in the Midwest, like Chicago, outside Chicago, or like Cali, where we do have some connections already with coaches that we know. We try to really focus in New England, New York, New Jersey, PA, and then Florida, and so there's a lot of people from New England and New York that have moved to like the coastal area of South Carolina. So there's a lot of people like just south of south of Myrtle Beach and like Murrells Inlet, which is like Georgetown County. So I have connections. I have friends with a bunch of coaches in that like window of area.
So is that like strategic? Like,
yes.
A lot of these people, players, high school athletes, prep athletes are not getting offers from the big time schools, so they're kind of left floundering, and that's when you guys come in and get those hidden gems?
So it depends. So it depends on the kid, it depends on the situation, everything's different. So we can kind of tell if that offer is going to go away, and it's nothing the kid does wrong. It's because it's portal. So, we'll kind of watch in the wings and see how, and we'll spy and talk to them. And, it's very similar to sales. It's touches. So, we'll talk to them. We'll keep in touch with them. And, at the same token, if they get that scholarship, I'll be the first person, hey, congrats, you deserve it. I'm not trying to like have a kid not go D1, but it does happen a lot. And so, everything's D3 football is not, people that don't know it and haven't seen it think it's like the 13th grade high school football. And I tell them, no, these are really good players up here, really good kids.
The redheaded stepchild, essentially. They think it's like a bad thing to go to D3.
Yeah, until they see it in person and they're like, whoa, I didn't know these kids are that big and that fast. So,
yeah, no, definitely. So you say in Rhode Island, you got to go to the Henderson games, LaSalle, the big time schools in Rhode Island. But you said you had Connecticut, Louisiana, Florida. How are you seeing those kids in person? Are you going to those states as well?
So that's more strategic because like we're not going every Friday night to Florida.
Yeah.
That's more off season stuff. Like Florida has spring ball down there. Unlike high school here in Rhode Island, they have spring ball. Connecticut actually, they allow spring ball if you back away a couple practices in the fall. So they allow spring ball in Connecticut based on how you do your practice schedule. So now some schools are really having full pad spring ball in Connecticut.
That's what's I did not know that's awesome.
It's new. It started a couple years ago, and so it gives us the opportunity in like May to go see games, or not games, but like scrimmages and practices. So, I've connected with the ECC League, the FCAC League, really most of the leagues now in Connecticut. So we have 24 Connecticut kids on the roster at UMass. So we've done a really good job, especially the last 3 years in Connecticut. And a lot of Eastern Connecticut kids know a lot of, Southeastern Rhode Island kids, Southwestern Rhode Island kids. So it's not a common Rhode Island kid that played FBU in youth or, did AU basketball that also do football, know these Connecticut kids.
Yeah, I know that as you were saying, Coach Dunbar was saying, there's a lot of Connecticut and like New Hampshire kids now on the breakthrough team coming because, they're liking what breakthrough does. And so, yeah, Connecticut is a big thing. And do you think that's has benefited UMass Dartmouth a lot? Because you guys have definitely a lot of Rhode Island and Connecticut kids on opposed to a lot of other schools.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Some schools are like backing off recruiting Connecticut, and I don't know why. There's a lot of really good talent there. I mean, and just like there's a lot of really good talent in Rhode Island. I mean, not every kid could play at UMass Dartmouth. It's like not every kid could play at like Brown, Bryant, or URI. But, we seem to find a lot of really hidden gems. I mean, we have a kid, Malachi Sameo from EWG, and if you said to somebody that didn't know that they could have a kid like that, well, where'd that kid come from? Why did you get that kid? He's a really hard worker and really talented, and he was right in the rotation with some of these other guys like Angel making plays, and who would have thought? And so, and the kid's a very good football player, and so like that's just one example. The younger Gaychuk Matt, he's one of our backup quarterbacks. He's also a starting punter, very talented kid, and if it wasn't for having Dante, he'd be a guy playing there as well, and he's good because they push each other and they're great competitors and they're great for each other and they both have amazing ability. So, like again, another small school. I mean, we have a lot of kids from all these small, as well as kids from Henderson and LaSalle. So, it's people, I say to people like, listen, obviously Henderson and LaSalle have the deepest of talent, and football's a team game, so you need more guys, obviously. So that helps with winning and things of that nature. But, there are individual players at every school. I mean, we have a kid from Johnston High School, Zednik, who's a 6'5.5", 225-pound thoroughbred. And he is very talented. He's a different animal in the field and very hard to cover. But we also have another kid, Hunter Remington, who's a great athlete. He played quarterback at Johnston, but he's just a good athlete. And so he plays slot, and he pushed every week as a true freshman to get time. And at the end of the year, he was seeing significant time as a rotator, and on specials. And a kid like that probably wouldn't even be recruited. They would think, well, he's an okay quarterback, and just think of him as a quarterback. I watched him on film and watched him live and said, you know what? I bet you this kid would be a great slot.
Yeah, even someone like, shout out to JP Mason. I know he was a vital part of your guys' team, and I'm not sure if he's a player like that. I'm not sure his recruiting process, but someone like that is a steal, and he has helped you guys out a lot as well. Yeah,
JP, when we went after JP, I just loved his like intensity, and he was just I actually went and saw him play 3 basketball games in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Every set, because I wanted to see him like in different settings. And so I'll do that. And a lot of college coaches football, and it's like a Power 5-star freak that every guy wants at the top of the echelon. You don't see that a lot in other levels. So, and that sounds like crazy because people say, why are you doing that? And I went and saw him. I loved his tenacity playing basketball. He was just really aggressive. He wasn't the tallest kid. He was probably like 5'11", 6 feet. And so that's not big for basketball, but like,
Yeah, I wish I had that.
so he, me too. So he, he would like crash the boards and he just like dive for balls and he was just like, had endless like drive and energy. I'm like, this kid's awesome. So we brought him in and he came in as a wideout initially because he played.
Yeah, like slot at Hendy.
So he played a little bit of D2 at Hendy, sparingly, but was mainly a slot. But they, that span of time at Hendy that was some of their better years where they're really dominant, right? And so we brought him in. And he was just behind a kid named Abby Bambos from Mass, who probably should have been an FCS FBS kid. And Abby was really talented. And so it wasn't that JP wasn't good. He was just behind a kid that was a creature. So he was kind of like frustrated because like he was the man at Hendricken. And he was thinking about actually transferring. And so about 3/4 of the way through the season, our safety tore his ACL. And our DC came over to us on offense at the time and said, hey, you think JP would come to defense? I think we could like play him at safety. And we're like, yeah, we'll approach him because, like, yeah, he's really athletic. It's just he's buried behind an all-conference freak.
Yeah.
It's not his fault. I mean, it's just kind of the way it played out. It's kind of like Joe Burrows at Ohio State. He was behind two dudes. So,
yeah.
So,
Happens that way
we go
sometimes.
to JP, and he, like, dug his heels, like, I'm not going to defense, right? And so, and it was funny because I look at him going, you could play. He's like, I'm an offensive player. And so he stayed in offense the rest of the year and obviously didn't play much more. And so he was, during the summer between freshman and sophomore year, he was thinking about transferring. And he didn't. And he gets into camp sophomore year, and like a couple days in, now we don't have a starting safety. And the coach and staff collaborator went to him and said, listen, JP, you're going to defense. We're not even like arguing about this anymore.
Yeah, you're telling you.
So he was like still kind of like not really happy. He goes to the defense, and within like 3 days is like lighting the world on fire, right?
Getting all that frustration
basically,
out.
Well, basically it was like, you look at like how he played basketball in high school. He's this aggressive, like no-nonsense guy. He took that mindset to defense, and suddenly he's like having all this success, shocker. And like, he makes all conference that year.
That's what's up. That's what's up for GP.
Not like honorable mention, like first team. And so at the end of the year, after sophomore year, we're like, well, how'd it go, JP? He's like, oh, this is great.
But better than sitting on the bench, that's for sure.
And so, and it wasn't because, again, what people don't understand is like, it wasn't that he wasn't good. That wasn't the point. It was also somebody, and that's how college is. Sometimes there's somebody just better than you at that point in your development. And so in that point forward, JP really like took off like a rocket, became a captain, and just was like all world. And so, and he had a great career. And, he got to win a New England Bowl as a junior, run up in the conference, win, the conference as a senior, go to the NCAAs, though we lost the number 9 team in the country, but that team's only loss was the national champion. So, and they were very good. So extremely good. People don't understand how that good that team was.
So someone like that, like it's JP as an example, how he kind of flipped the switch. Does he, like someone like that, what's like their next step after UMass Dartmouth? Like, are you guys helping them job-wise? You guys helping them, hey, you guys are trying out for CFL, XFL, NFL? What's like someone...
So non-football related, we have a really strong, both with the university career development program, because we're at UMass. We also have a huge football alumni booster club that is... Their sole purpose other than fundraising is honestly jobs. So we get a lot of kids really high-end jobs at our place. So like, there's never a kid not getting a good job out of here. So unless they just don't want to. So, and that's very rare. So, he's a good student too. So for him, he's got a lot of different opportunities right now. So for him, our OC had said to him, because we're real connected with a lot of guys in the league, said, if that's something you want, we'll get you a pro day this spring. Try to get you the national combine. If not, we can get you some smaller regional combines, or multiple pro days and get you looked at. And so that's really kind of on his side, he's got to decide, very soon, do I want to put the pedal to the metal and really dive into that? Because that's like a mega day-to-day investment. If he doesn't want to do that, then he can go on to the transitioning to like the job world, so to speak, or grad school.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have guys that walk out the door in graduation, they already have jobs signed. I mean, that's what happened with Stephen Gachuk. When he graduated, he had an engineering job in Providence already. And within 4 months later, an alumnus from our program that was 6 years older than him got him almost a 6-figure job in Florida doing engineering.
That's awesome. Do you think that's something you guys can use, that you guys use for like a factor to attract people to UMass Dartmouth as well? I'm not familiar with the recruiting side of it, so I know I've heard the stories. I'm wearing Utah State sweatshirt because my best friend went to Utah State as linebacker. And I've been told plenty of stories where recruiting is a business side of it too, which obviously we all know. So do you think you guys care a little bit more than other schools about these kids, well-being after, is it more of like, how is it trying to differentiate the business and like the personal side, the relationship side of caring about these kids?
As you go up every level, obviously across the board, it's more competitive because of the media and because of TV and TV money and all that stuff. So you have to constantly at the FBS level and the FCS level, like there's guys that go 7-3 and get fired. Like you think about it, that's pretty aggressive. And the
that's
guys,
tough, yeah.
Guys go 9-2 and get fired. And so the problem with that, with the roster at those levels, is that you're always trying to get better, which means you might have to out-recruit a kid that was your starter last year. And that's tough sledding because you're trying to get better in such a small window of time that kid might not, the kid that's in the spot at the time might not develop fast enough to get better enough where you need him to be to beat your opponents and get to 10-0 or 11-0 or 12-0. So unfortunately, that level is such a grind of a business in that sense that if their strength and conditioning staff and their team as the coaches can't feel they can't get that kid to a certain point of development by a certain time frame, they don't have a choice but to go get a transfer. And so this is more accelerated with the portal now because it's like open market. It's like shopping on Amazon for recruits. So literally, kids have to understand is like we as society, the win now or go home mentality at such a egregious level, like people were giving hate to TCU losing to Georgia, and Georgia's an elite program at a whole nother level.
Shout out Xavier Truss.
Yeah, Xavier is a great kid. So, so you look at that and go, TCU was a great team all year. They beat Michigan. It's not like they were a horrible team.
And now they're calling for their heads.
Yeah, and so now think about it. So imagine being that coaching staff at TCU. They're probably like, we got to get like crazy better overnight. And they weren't a bad team. That night they didn't look great. But Georgia also hit a level of production that was so amazing. And like kudos to that team, the players, the staff, and the whole Georgia community. I mean, I've seen Xavier Truss when he's come home. He's really good friends with my oldest stepdaughter. And like when he was home during COVID for part of the year, they didn't have a basketball hoop and his younger sister plays basketball. We had one, I call it a driveway. I remember like my kids were using it. It was like a year old. Yeah. And so his mom had put something on social media, and Gina's, good friends with us. And so Steve, and I was like, yeah, come by the house and grab it. So I hadn't seen him in person, in a while, because he was down at Georgia, and those FBS kids are down at their schools for long. They're not home much. So he came by and he looked so lean because he had completely redeveloped his body. He almost looked thin, but he was like 330, like a thoroughbred. I'm like, oh my God.
They're developing him.
Oh my God. He looked like an absolute different animal. And he looked great. And he just looked so healthy and so good. And I was like, good for you, man. Like, and not that he was not healthy when he was coming out of high school. He just looked so different. And it was like amazing what they did with this kid. And I was like, well, that's why you're at Georgia. So
and that's why there's Georgia there, and TCU, they're calling for heads now. So I guess like just back to that original question. So like, talking about coaches getting called for their heads. So that's why you think it's all business with like the TCUs of the world, the Georgias, Alabamas,
with the way FBS works, and even FCS a little bit. FBS is 85 full scholarships. You would get it or you don't, and you can't manipulate them. They're either fulls or you don't get it. So they're always looking for the better shiny toy to get better. And so not that everybody's trying to get better players and get better developing roster, but they're trying to like replace kids at that level sometimes. So, they kind of make it kind of unhappy for kids that they're trying to get off the roster because they're trying to replace them. So it's hard for them to be loyal to their kids because of how it's all working, which is sad, but like this is the way that level has become. It's really gotten evolved a lot the last 20, 30 years like that.
So if you're a kid, say you're Effie from St. Ray's, and I'm looking at, I'm top recruit, I'm looking at Georgia's looking at me, Wake Forest is looking at me, all the top schools you think of, all the Power 5 schools, they're all lying to me, essentially. You think they're all like this? They're all playing the game. They're all trying to convince me to get to their school. Well, it's not lying, but why are these schools just trying to stock up as many kids when they know deep down inside, Effie from St. Ray's is getting no playing time? They're trying to get me in their roster.
So it's not even that. So they have to all jockey for the Power 5 kids. So, Xavier had, I forget the number, I think it was like 48 or 50-something offers at the end. Because he was that good, he was that big, and he had all the check the boxes. So everybody wanted him because of like his whole body of work. Good family, good everything. Good student, come from good school, had all the check the box. So that kid gets a million offers because everybody wants him, right? So like he's in a different deal than some other kids, and that's why he would get all those offers because they weren't going to go away. He was really in the buyer's market, so to speak. A kid that might be like say 6'4", 310, not 6'7", 330, 320. Well, he doesn't have the check the box with a freakish frame, but a really good frame. So if they find a better shiny toy, and they'll offer, say, for that one lineman spot, let's say they offer 40 different kids for that one spot. They're going to rank those kids on the board. Now, they're not going to get their number one, number two kid sometimes. That kid might go to Bama or go to LSU or wherever. And so they got to tier them out and figure out, okay, who's remaining on our board will be the guy we take. That's why they offer so many kids for that one spot, because they could lose kids in the process, even Georgia. And so it becomes this like jockeying. And then if a kid gets hurt, a kid messes with his grades a little bit, or there's something comes up that's weird, nothing like even criminal, but like something that just doesn't look right, they could slide down their actual fluid recruiting board, so to speak. So that's why they offer so many kids. Now, they also have to be careful. Like, let's say, God forbid, not Georgia, because they've done such a good job with like how they run business. Let's say it was school X, and let's say they get in trouble for like a minor recruiting violation. That could get a bunch of those kids at the top of their board to say, I'm not going there.
That's true.
And they'll fall off that board. And they don't, because you're dealing with people all day. So like, all it takes is one assistant, anybody, a secretary, anyone that does anything they're not supposed to do could get them popped for that. And they're all on the hook as a school. So that's also why they offer that many kids, because that could happen. It does happen. And so, and sometimes they just make a mistake they don't intend to. So there's a lot of checks and balances now in a lot of these schools that it shouldn't happen. Even we have things with our compliance officer, we're very attention to detail that stuff.
So that's the school side of it. So talking about, that's the business side for the universities. So when does Effie, the 4-star recruit, how does he know who to choose, who to trust?
It's hard.
Where should I go for playing time? Oh, yeah, you're going to play. You know you come here. You're the best in Rhode Island. You're so good. Oh, okay, I'm going to play at Georgia.
I tell kids.
Don't see playing time.
Don't mean to cut you off, Effie. So I tell kids, the more love you get from coaches that really like, you can tell if the guy, you should be able to tell if the guy's being transparent or he's kind of used car salesman. You also can tell by the pattern on their current roster, where their kids are coming from, the percentage of kids playing from that area, how much playing time they get. Now, some of that has to do with like how fast their development is. Everybody's development is different. Some people takes them 2-3 years, some teachers take them 2-3 weeks, and everything in between. So I tell people your timeline is, everybody's timeline is different. Doesn't mean like they like one guy more than others. It's just your development timeline. But if you can tell also when you go to a game day visit, what's the interaction with their players, with the coaches across the board? You can tell the energy. You can tell the, and I think people can fake it to an extent, but you can tell. And that filters into like how hard kids will work for those coaches. Because I tell people all the time, you can't coach people hard if their kids don't realize you really care about them.
Yeah.
It's the truth. Like, you're not going to run through a wall for a coach if the coach is not really a good guy and you don't feel like he cares about you. So like at our place, we don't ever try to bring in any kids that can't play for us, for one. A lot of schools call them program kids. Now, we might have one or two on a roster, but not many. So we really believe every kid we try to bring in our program can actually eventually in their timeline play for us. It may not be year one, but some point in their development, they will be the guy. Or at least minimally a rotating like key variable guy playing, and at least specials minimally. So like a lot of programs bring guys that never play there. Like every year, boom, boom, boom. That's just not how we do business at our place. So and I think the kids realize that they've been there more than a year. And they're like, wait a minute, they really do care about me. They really want me to be the guy. And then they look back and they understand why we said no to kids they were friends with. And they're like, why didn't you recruit Johnny Smith? And we're like, well, Johnny Smith isn't you. And they see, now they understand once they're with us, when they remember Johnny Smith, like the little things that were good about Johnny Smith, like, oh, that's why they didn't recruit him. And so it makes sense in the back end of these kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's proven you guys are bringing home championships back to back. But I'm still genuinely intrigued on this. So like, why do other programs do that? There's like, say a D3 program, D1, we know why we're doing it. You kind of went over that previously. But a D3, why are they offering a kid they know deep down inside this kid's never going to play?
Some private, not all private schools. I went to a private school for college, undergrad and grad school. Some private schools, they use bigger teams, rosters for enrollment. Some schools will bring 150, 160 kids to camp. And my philosophy is, After 140, you don't need any more kids unless you're a really bad recruiter, because here's why. As far as an evaluator, you don't need more than 140 to run your program. Now, you have attrition in D3 because you don't have full athletic scholarships to like basically, not because control is a bad word, but to keep them locked in whole time, because D1s get away with that in the sense that like if you're giving that kid a full scholarship, he's more likely to stay because unless he's going to transfer to another D1 scholarship, because he's getting a full scholarship. So like it's like you're basically paying him to be there, strictly because of football. So our level, there is some attrition, and it actually even happens a little bit at the Ivy League. Ivy League is non-scholarship, though it is D1. High academics, great players. They are D1 players. But, I've had this conversation with friends of mine at multiple Ivy Leagues, Brown, Yale, Princeton, where they do lose some kids. And the reason they do is they get into school, they have a year of football, and they go, you know what? I'm just going to hang out with my boys and go to school, because they can't kick them out. Because that's how Ivy League is, unless they mess up grade-wise or do something illegal off, school-wise. So they do lose some attrition. In D3, you do lose a little percentage of kids. Because kids get to D3, they in their minds think, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm going to play like day one because it's only D3. And they get into camp and go, whoa, there's some really talented big humans here. So yeah. It's like a culture shock to kids. I think a lot of kids have a misconception of what D3 is. So a pocket of those kids, a couple kids a year, every year, no matter what school is in D3, will quit. Now, and it's sad because like they could play there eventually. They just get overwhelmed with the fact that I thought it was only going to be this good, and it's really like this good. And so it's like, whoa, this is way better than I thought. So that's why a couple kids will quit every year. No matter, so you'll lose kids attrition that wise. You'll lose kids to injuries. It happens. College is much more intense. Not that high school is not intense, because it is. But like the expectation, what you're going to do in every single drill is much more higher. So the teams have to bring in numbers.
Gotcha. So that's more just like emergency case scenario.
Well, no, it's just strictly numbers. Like you could lose 3 starters, and like if it's in the same position, or like a starter and rotator, now your third best kid has to play. If he's not good, you better have a 4th and 5th best kid behind him, or you're dead. So like that's why you need that quality depth. Like you really do need, and for example, at UMass, we have 6 kids that are always up at the ones in the one back room. There's always 6 ones up there. And then the rest of the kids are down scout. But like one of those kids goes down, we bring a kid up because we really do need that kid to play.
Gotcha.
So, because we're going to have injuries throughout the year. I mean, when we beat Framingham State week 3, our 2 best running backs statistically didn't play in the game. And people were like, how did you beat that team? I said, because we have really good players. Because, so we all, again, we recruit kids that all can play for us eventually.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, that's different here from the coaching side. Obviously, as a player side, players get upset easily. I was told I was going to play here. I don't see playing time until like week 6. What's going on? And then it's tough to like trust the coaches because, like you said, it's a rotating character. So my friend from Utah State, same thing happened to him. He came in, got recruited. The coaches that recruited him all got fired. Now he's there. The new coach doesn't like him, and now he's like, "What do I do?"
Goes in the portal.
Goes in the portal. Then he takes someone else's position. It's kind of that rotating thing where, like you're saying, the business side of it, and then like other players who thought they were going to that place. Now what are they doing? It's a crazy. College football is definitely a crazy business in itself.
I tell people all the time, the recruiting process is not linear. It is like up and down, up and down. It's never like, it's not as clean as everybody thinks. And even when Xavier was going through the process, I remember talking to his mom and his dad, they were kind of burnt out because they were just going to camps and camps. And those parents were such awesome people for that kid. That kid's lucky. Those parents are great people. So, and they those 2 people did a tremendous job with that kid. So kudos to those people. So literally, they brought that kid to more camps, and they did a good job of listening to the right people, college coaches, recruiting people, people that weren't even at D1 that knew how that world was. I was one of the many trillion people they were talking to them off and on. And they really, that kid should give them the biggest gift when he graduates. I shouldn't say if he will. I think he will play in the NFL, definitely. I think they both deserve like something cool.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big thing too with a lot of these parents and people in their life where they deserve credit because that's a whole lot of work doing that college recruiting process.
It's a major commitment, and those 2 parents were flying all over the country, driving all over the country. I mean, I remember it was like they're on tour like Justin Bieber every week. It was crazy. But like you look and go, that's the process. And they did have a son that had all the check the box, and they still had to do that. And I'm like, it is 1.1 million high school football players play varsity football in the nation. There's only 600 something college programs, all levels, not including JUCO and NAIA. So, I mean, with those two levels as well, it's like 800. That's not many schools.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think the number was like 70,000 kids play collegiate football levels at 1.1 million kids. That's an elite number.
Yeah, elite number. And so someone like that, like what's like your message to someone who is, you know, why should a kid go to D3 opposed to a D1, D1AA, D1 school? So,
I mean, first of all, you gotta understand D1, when you go to FBS, you're going to be doing 99% of your day-to-day for like 50 of the 52 weeks of the year, literally, is going to be school, football, and anything related to football. I mean, those FBS programs, when you play a home game, the night before the game, most of those programs have their kids at a hotel, not in the dorm rooms, and they go to a hotel to get away from any other people, and they have dinner at the hotel, they stay overnight in the hotel, there's lights out time, they're in meeting rooms and ballrooms, almost like the NFL, because the level of attention detail you need to be good and be ready, you can't have any snafus. That's what they have to do even for home games. And then the away games, obviously the same because they're on the road. So, like, understand that, like, at our level, at least, on a Friday night, they get done with, like, practice at Friday afternoon. They do have some downtime. If they, like, that kid wants to, like, go grab a piece of pizza and go to a movie, a 7 o'clock movie, they can do that. At the FCS level, and especially the FBS level, they are not doing that in season. And so that's a wake-up call to kids to see how much they basically have your life in their hands, you know, their day-to-day. So that's
those kids have no, like, say, like,
no,
hey, coach, my mom's in town today. I want to go take dinner with them before the game.
No, it doesn't work that way. Now, they do get some downtime. It's scheduled, obviously. And so you see these pictures of kids, you know, with a quick snippet with their parents or siblings and parents and grandparents. And so they do have some very mild, I call it soft downtime, but it's not much.
So what would happen, though, if I was just like, coach, no, I can't, I'm going?
Well, if it depends. If you just like don't, if that's not a conversation, it's like agreement. And it's going to be very rare they let you do that. If you just like ghost them and like go AWOL, so to speak, unless you're a starting third year, fourth year player, you're probably out of the program.
Really, like on the spot, they'll be like, after, you know,
they can go in that portal immediately and pull a kid out. So, you know, there's a standard of like accountability that's elite. FBS is a job, and FCS is like basically like a 99% full-time job. So, you know, there's just like tiers of it. And even at D2 and D3, I mean, you get to the programs that are really climbing or elite. I mean, we talked to the guys in Mythica, and I know some guys, some of these big time schools, Mayheart and Baylor, and they're running like borderline FCS programs, really. You know, so the way that their day-to-day is. So it really is really competitive. So the reason you would go to D3, I think, is one, if you have D1 ability and you decide you want to go D3, it's because you really want to focus more on academics. Now, if you're in a crazy elite academic kid where you're getting straight 4.0s, AP everything, you know, 1,400 SATs, those are Ivy League kids. So they basically want a borderline D3 kind of lifestyle. And that key, because again, what people don't understand is like, those guys train like D1 at Ivy League. They are D1. But they also have like, it's crazy because they do D1 athletics with like the craziest level academics.
Yeah, I mean, they do have those ballers like the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world who are league bound.
The Ivy League has, I mean, Brown has multiple kids right now in the NFL and very elite. And then one of the D linemen that plays and is a key rotator for the Rams is a Brown kid. He's a dude. And EJ Perry, it's actually the coach's nephew. He's a freak athlete and a great person. Oh my God. And so they have kids, and Devlin played at Brown, played many years for the Pats as a fullback, and kind of had a weird way how he got to the NFL, but was an elite dude in the NFL. And and so Brown has produced a number of NFL athletes year after year, every, if not every year, every other year. So the Ivy League is definitely producing NFL athletes. So what I'm saying is like they're juggling the highest level academics, which is crazy, with almost the highest level of athletics. I mean, as a team, obviously Brown's not as talented as like an Alabama, but also Alabama's not doing, astroeconomics, like they're not doing pre-med, pre-law like every other kid. So it's like, when you think of like what they have to juggle in the Ivy League, it's like mind-blowing.
Do you think D3 is used as like a platform as well to get their kids get their grades up, or kind of like a stepping stone between to develop to like a D1 school?
I give an example. Like, I say, okay, who was one of the best DNs that came out of New England in the NFL last year? After the fall of 21, the spring of 22.
Is that a question to me?
Yeah.
I can't think of who would you be thinking of. I know it's not Quiddy is what you're trying to say, but
no. So, Quiddy obviously was the year before. He came out.
Yeah, I can't think of last year.
A kid that played in New England was a New England-based kid that went and got in the NFL, and actually is on the active roster. It's a kid from Framingham State. He's a Wareham mascot. The kid's name is Josh, number 49. He is on the active roster right now for the Seahawks.
Oh, yeah. I do know them. One of my friends was telling me that, with my boy Bo. He played with my boy Bo. Shout out to Bo of Framingham.
So he was a kid that was, I call it like a late bloomer. He was lean, but he was like really athletic and freakishly put together. And he like worked his tail off. And he played as a true freshman at Framingham. Just got better, rapidly better every year.
That Framingham team was really good. Like top defense in the league, right?
They were one of the best teams in the league for like 12 years. They won the league 10 times.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you know my friend Bo. He was a slot receiver.
Yes, I remember him. He's a good player.
Bo and
so we had a lot of good battles with them, and so we had beaten them once in 16 in a battle royale game, and then we had a bunch of key injuries. This goes back to the depth thing. And so back then we only had like 90-something guys in the roster. We realized very quickly like we need more than that because we were rolling and we beat them. Then we'd have like catastrophic injuries, and the second, third kids behind the back were like not ready to go. And so, when the back gets stinged, you rotate a kid in, it was like a cliff. We didn't have the depth. So we learned that from that osmosis in 16. So that kid Josh went on to the league and went ham and is playing in the league. So he was a kid probably could have been an FCS kid. Year 2, year 3, he had gotten to that development already. But, he just decided to stay at Framingham. He was happy there and doing well. And, I tell people when you leave a school, the problem is it's like you're resetting. So, even though a coach tells you to go in the back door, you'll put yourself in the portal and go somewhere else, doesn't mean you're going to start.
Yeah, so like, just we can use him. He's my boy. He's been on the podcast. Fighting for the number 1 spot for guest features on the podcast. My guy Angel Sanchez, all region, all New England. Just using someone like an Angel. He's balling out right now. D3 school, UMass Dartmouth. What would you say to someone like, even if he wasn't at your school, kind of like him, if you guys grades up, he's eligible for a D1 transfer. That's like the success, the scary part. Does he go to like
here's the thing. Like, if you're producing, the NFL wants film. And they want stats, and they want to like look at like your check the boxes. He is catching footballs at an elite level. He is producing an elite level. If he goes somewhere else, and they run a different offense, even if it's Division I, and they throw the ball less and they do less things, he doesn't have the same film. So like, look at the kid Josh. He was their guy at Framingham. Like when they sent somebody off the edge, they'd walk him up, they'd shift people around, he'd come. So he had more like opportunities to have that clip on film. Would he have the same opportunity in Division I? I don't know. You're like rolling the dice. So there's no guarantees. Now it could work out. I'm not saying it couldn't, but do they run the exact same system? Are they going to do the exact same like play opportunities? Are they going to have the same quarterback connection with him? Like there's a lot of variables.
Are they not going to get another transfer from the portal out of nowhere?
And that doesn't mean like there's a lot of kids. Like look at the Joe Burrow situation. He was at D1. He was the 3 at Ohio State, not getting a sniff. And 2 years later, he's the Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 pick in the draft, and lights the world on fire. So the guys at Ohio State didn't think he was the guy. He leaves a D1 program, goes to LSU, who had no quarterback, and suddenly becomes
the guy.
Haley's Comet. So, it's like, but then there's many guys in that scenario that leave like Ohio State from that and go somewhere else and don't ever play.
You always hear the success stories. Don't hear the ones that no one knows about anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot more non-success stories
than like the Jalen Hurts of the world.
Sometimes it's not because the kid; it's because the coach likes some other kid, right? Like, so it's like you gotta. I think in recruiting, you gotta say, do I fit them and do they fit me? Right? That's part of it. I tell people like you recruit a kid and you may not like the family because of weird things or like, and so you won't keep recruiting that kid. And people are like, well, why do you deal with the family? Like you're recruiting the whole.
I was just about to ask you. You mentioned the family quite a few times. So you about to say, why is the family such a big aspect in the recruiting process?
Because we're being tasked to be like their surrogate, semi-part-time parents, basically. And so the parents have to entrust us in the responsibility. They're not kids; they're young adults, but we're old, so some of us are old.
The kid.
So like for us, like the parents and half the kids have to be bought in that we're like going to do right by their kid, right? And that's not just playing time; it's like the whole wraparound, like academics, social, emotional, school, like everything. So, if that parent's going to constantly question, like, saying, how much playing time is it? Like, well, at the end of the day, if we collaboratively work well together, kids training, developing, we're doing a good job developing them, then that's going to work itself out as it is. Like it's going to become where they play well, and they're going to eventually be the guys. So it's a relationship between us and the family, each individual family, individual kid. So that's important because, like, at the end of the day, like, if they're on the same page with us, we're collaboratively working together, the kid's going to do well academically because we're all on the same page. The kid's going to do well athletically because he's not going to have stinking thinking. We're all on the same page. And then when you have a whole roster of parents and kids that all get it like that, that's magic.
Magic. So you have a parent who's just not like that. Nonstop. You're going to stop even communication with this kid.
So it depends on, does the kid realize, and it's sad when this happens because you don't really want this to happen, the kid realizes maybe that parent's being irrational. And I am never against a parent like being positive and like trying to like not fight for their kid, but like the proper word is advocate for their kid. And so the thing I think we do well at our school, and our coordinators are amazing at it, and our head coach is amazing at it, we will always give a kid the check the boxes they have to hit to be the guy in development. This is, all colleges film their practices, but we can really show them, if you hit these check the boxes, it's a wide out. If you master this drill, which means technique with your footwork, master this drill is routes under catching balls, master this drill where you know your concepts and go out there and do it in film and practice. Those things add up to like your portfolio to be the guy. Now you might be behind somebody that's a little bit better than you, and that's okay, but we run a tempo offense. We try to run a lot of plays in a game. And the two reasons we want to do is, one, because we feel it's an advantage, and two, we also do it because it gives us the ability, as long as you have the depth, to put other guys out there in rotation.
Yeah.
What we call bites of the apple.
Yeah, I went to the whiteout game and you guys were just nonstop.
Yeah.
Receiver,
Constant,
switching.
Right? So, and it's really crippling when we're going, it's pretty elite. So, when we say we need like 12 wideouts to play the 4 wideout spots, we're not lying.
Yeah, definitely not. And the thing is, I've seen, it's not part of the question, but go to your point, is even Dante's not forcing it to Angel. He's giving it to everybody. He's distributing it to everybody. It's not just the Angel show. It's you got anybody's getting.
So we really like. There's times Dante draws like triple coverage, and what happens is they're not properly defending the rest of the guys schematically. So we tell the guys, listen, our philosophy is, and it sounds very like Game of Thrones-ish, but we're like, they're going to choose how they want to die, so to speak, this other team. Yeah. Run, pass, verticals, check downs, So, we really are very strategic with what boxes we get, what coverage we get. So, and Dante's very, very smart. And so, and all the quarterbacks are. All the quarterbacks are in quarterback room, really highly intelligent kids, very athletic kids. Like, they're all, at some point in their career, going to play. And so, again, we're very strategic. We bring in that quarterback room. They're all really talented. There's no slappy, so to speak. They're really it's a very crude thing to say, but it's true. So these guys understand it's like, if guys are open, put the ball to where they're supposed to go. Because we're going tempo, we're going fast, the defense is like, their heads are spinning. Yeah. The most crippling thing you have is like, have a 3-4 play drive, you move 80 yards in 4 plays in like a minute and 10 seconds and score. Because that team's DC is going ham on their defense, going, yelling at them, like, get gaps out. So they're so like out of it, trying to like hang on for dear life, that it gives more opportunities to everybody. Yeah, there's games that we have 3 receivers getting 100 yards receiving a piece.
Yeah, I've seen that. Definitely a couple times this season.
So as a lot of teams that don't run tempo, that go slower, that run less plays, that's when their kids have lost stinging thing because there's only so much opportunity. The way we do business allows more opportunity.
Yeah, just to finish off the last question. So has there been opportunities where has there been predicaments where a kid has been like blackballed because of parents?
In the recruiting process?
In the recruiting process, yeah.
Well, we don't, it's not really, I wouldn't call it blackball. We just kind of move on. I mean, we just say, hey, listen.
Not as you guys saying, like, you said you know a bunch of coaches, you have a coaching network. Where hey, Effie's parents, man, they are the worst.
Yeah,
don't even talk to this kid. Don't waste your time.
It happens. I mean, but people think like separate teams like hate each other. We hate each other like game week. But like most of the guys, we're all doing the same deal at the end of the day at all levels. I mean, it gets harder as you go up the ranks because it's just more stressful. And you got to be more attention to detail because like you're trying to get those top 5 kids in that position in the country. But like at the end of the day, we're all doing the same deal. It's recruiting, it's marketing, it's hosting kids, it's relationships, it's designing plays, it's tagging film, it's a whole gamut. So for us, it's like we have friends up and down all levels of college football, and so and even our own level. Like I have friends at half the league teams in the league. I have good friends with the guys, and vice versa. And so we don't, for example, like we don't have phys ed at our school. So I'm not gonna tell a kid to come to school because we don't have phys ed. Like why would I do that?
Yeah.
So like if they're like, some kids are like very like we want to just do phys ed. So like some places you go is obviously in our league. Bridgewater, they have phys ed. Springfield is not in our league, but they have phys ed. Rhode has phys ed. Southern Connecticut, Plymouth State, who's are in our league, has phys ed. So like we don't have phys ed. But I'm not gonna lie to a kid and say, well, we have phys ed. No, we don't. So they ask me, and I'm very honest. Like these are the teams out there that have football that have phys ed.
Yeah, and then so if there are other coaches' friends, they're like, hey, what do you think about this kid? And you're gonna be like, parents, no go, watch out.
Or on the flip side of the coin, when that's true with that scenario where the kid's just got a lot of bad baggage, we also will be like, hey, this kid's a dude. Like, he just wants to do phys ed. We don't have phys ed. Like, so we'll say, hey, do you know about this kid? Like, oh, no, I didn't know that kid was that good. And vice versa, we have engineering. A lot of schools don't have engineering. So it's a very hard major and a very unique major. So, and some do, but a lot don't. So, like, they'll say, hey, Rye, we got this, guys at Bridgewater, they don't have engineering. Like, hey, this is like amazing engineering kid. Like, have you seen him? Like, oh yeah, we have. Where'd you see him? They're like, oh, we saw him at like multiple camps. We weren't at those camps. We were at these camps, and he hasn't gone to those camps yet, but they're coming up. So the second or third round of those camps. So we share information. There's a lot of information sharing, and a lot of like, and same thing with like coaches. There's good coaches out there that are some guys jump around more than others, and some guys are bad coaches. And so, you don't want to get a bad egg in your staff, and you also want good eggs in your staff.
Yeah.
And they don't leave school. Sometimes they don't leave schools because they want to leave school. They just, you know what? We're going to move, and my wife wants to live in, like, I don't know, the Cape, which is close to us. Where, like, they move, they're living in, like, Beverly, Mass. They'll coach at, like, Endicott. Or, or they just their kid wants to go to Salve, and Salve might give a deal if you coach there that you get half off tuition. Like, that happens. So, and they get a
whole bunch of different factors.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. It's not just, like, they get fired or get hired. Like, that's part of it, but there's other factors that affect that.
So talking about factors, so what are like top 3 things players should or shouldn't do during the like recruiting process with coaching, or just the recruiting process in general? Like,
I tell kids, do not badmouth your high school coach. Like, don't like, you can say, man, I like a certain thing, but like, don't like be mega negative. That's just a bad sign, And
can you have an example? So if I'm like, hey, Coach McCormack, you're just like, I would have better film, but my coach just didn't like me. Like, he didn't put me in good situations. If he did, I would have had a better film. Is that something you're talking about right there?
Yeah, it's just a bad red flag. Number 2, it's making excuses why you have bad grades. Now, during the COVID process, everybody had some percentage of drop off to some percent. Like even it's like from A to an A minus, or from like a B to like a D. Like that did happen for like a semester. Now, if it continues to happen, then I'm like, well, Johnny, COVID was not as heightened now that was 2 years ago. So, so like that's an excuse. I'm like, or the real bad signs, you see a kid have phys ed class and they're getting D's in phys ed or C's in phys ed. It's like, you didn't dress, which means you're a behavioral problem. You can't follow directions. So that's just a bad red flag to us. But so those things you shouldn't do. Putting crazy stuff on social media, don't do that. Like,
I was just going to say, so, with Coach Dunbar, we had a whole conversation about it. Because actually, I thought about Joe Burr, actually, been a popular name on this podcast so far. He said that don't post your workouts. If you're working out, do it in silence. But he's also a freak athlete. He's elite level. The Rhode Island kids, Connecticut kids, South Carolina kids you're talking about, do you think these kids should be putting their workouts, filming their workouts? Are you looking at that as like a positive, as a negative?
I think, so yes and no. When you're younger and you're like a freshman, a lot of freshmen aren't working out hardcore like they should consistently. They might be for a couple months, but you should, because it shows you're invested. So that, but like, if you're putting on major numbers like no one else can do, yeah. I mean, because like, how many kids can bench 400 pounds in high school? Not many. How many kids can bench a squat over 500 pounds? Now, what he's referencing is the work in silencing is part of it, but because maybe like you want to go to a combine and surprise people, like a prospect showcase what you can lift, but I guess that's a different angle. But like, if you're lifting with poor technique and not great numbers, you may not want to do that. But they're going to find out anyways eventually, because they're going to get you on a visit. They're going to get you at a showcase, and then the numbers are going to come out in the wash. And now if you don't put up any numbers and no one knows, and you don't have a freak frame, they're not going to touch you.
Yeah, how about the kids that are doing ladder drills, but their technique is terrible? That can hurt them, if anything.
Yeah, because like you're doing the wrong stuff.
Yeah, so that's like the film side of it, but the kids are approaching crazy stuff. They're smoking weed. They're
anything illegal, anything like you shouldn't be doing. Basically, here's my thing. I tell people, if you don't want it on a billboard on 95 every day, all day long, then you don't put it on Twitter or social media.
As a recruiter, are you actively looking at these kids' social medias if they're public?
Yeah, I mean, so the recruiting apps are out there. There's an app we use called Front Rush. A lot of the FBS guys use a thing called ARMS. ARMS is really developed for Major League FBS and FCS because of the recruiting rules. There's dead periods at that level, and there's like soft dead periods and there's like hard dead periods. So that app for ARMS for that level is connected to your phone. So when you contact a recruit through the app, and you have to, it tells you if like it's a dead period and you can't contact them. So it locks down the phone from contacting that kid, which it's a safety mechanism. So which is good. So like people don't know this, but Twitter, there's a way to pull kids' Twitters through the apps, Front Rush and ARMS. So we use it to find kids on Twitter. So and actually Instagram as well. So that's why the coaches like, because it's a quick way to find them. Which their huddle will link to their Twitter, which links to, and so that's why we have that. But yeah, putting crazy things on there is not good.
So it's pulling all your information, it's pulling all your tweets, all your Instagram posts, onto that?
Oh, yeah.
How about even like deleted ones? Because I'm not familiar. It's like...
the problem is if somebody else tagged you can find it or find a link to it. So it's just, and because when people start liking and commenting, it goes like viral, so to speak. So
yeah.
So I tell kids like, it's like, you don't really need to do like it just tells me that that's what you're about. It's like again, back to the whole thing with time. If you're going to go FBS, FCS, and your whole time at that level is like a lot of football, right, in school, and you're not about that, you're about like partying and doing drugs, like, well, then you're not about football at that high level. So that means you're asking a coach to try to change you and fit their deal. Like, why would they do that when there's 1.1 million kids?
That's a good point. How about the kids that just like post like dumb, like weird pictures? Like kids, I see it's even nowadays when kids are just like flipping off the camera and stuff like that. It's like, are they being funny or is it like...
Now here's the thing: if they're, when a lot of schools require you to disclose if you have a criminal offense, things of that nature. So like, and that can disqualify you from a scholarship at that FCS, FBS level, or even disqualify you from being admitted at a school by like school rules. So, if we see that, then we're gonna be like, wait a minute, and that school might start digging deeper and then find something that maybe before they probably wouldn't be able to find. So, so it just again, it goes back to character and like perception is reality. So what you put out there, like you could be this like totally like highly academic, kind of like homebody, family guy, but if you put stuff out there to try to be someone you're not, well, that's what people think you are. They don't know.
That's true.
So, I mean, I tell people all the time, listen, don't be who you are, and be strategic about this. Like, at the end of the day, the guy at Bryant's a good guy, Chris Merritt. He always says you're always interviewing, basically. It's like, think of it like a job interview. So, like, what do you want out there? At the end of the day, the kid, if you want to be at a school, you want to play collegiate football, you're essentially through social media, it's like your passive aggressive job interview. So like whatever you put on there has got to be good stuff.
Yep, you got to be good stuff. Talking about, so that was like a little bit of the negative stuff. Not the negative, but the stuff is the reality. The bad things where you shouldn't be doing. What should these kids be doing then on the opposite spectrum of it?
First of all, grades are key. I tell people C's and D's don't get degrees and F's forget about it. Like, you can have like one class. If you take like AP Calc and you get a D or a C minus, like, and that's the only time you ever got a D or C minus, I can kind of envision that because like it's a hard class. Now, if you get A's and B's and everything else, I could rationalize that. It means just it's a hard class and you struggle with it. It doesn't mean you're like not a good student. A lot of people struggle with AP Calculus or AB Organic Chem.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame them.
So, but like, and now that's going to hurt a kid going to like Ivy League, obviously, or Patriot League, which is like a Holy Cross's level. But that might not get you disqualified from like a UMass Dartmouth or like a Rhode, because all the other classes are A's and B's. It's when you see a kid getting like B's in phys ed, which is like still a red flag. You should be getting A's if you're an athlete, because it tells me you're not following direction, you're not putting your best foot forward, and we want people that are leaders and producers. And then you're getting like a C minus in like Algebra 1, and then getting like a D in Algebra 2, and then getting like a C plus in Algebra or Geometry. And then you've taken no other hard maths and not gotten a good grade in any hard maths. Then you're getting like C's and D's in English. A D at the college scale, when you reconfigure, it's a 1.0. A C minus is a 1.7. A solid C, which is a 73 or higher, our scale is a 2.0. A non-qualifier is under a core 2.3. And the core is, you go through the eligibility center to be qualified. This is mainly for D2, D, FCS, and FBS, because they require it. D3 doesn't require it, but still, most schools in D3 have not higher standards than D1, but like a lot of have really high academic standards. A lot of schools at the D1 level, as long as you have over as long as you're a qualifier, depending what the academic requirements are of that school, we'll let a kid in with a 2.5. Depends what major and things of that nature. But like, places like Notre Dame, Stanford, they're not. Even Michigan, it's the number one public school in the country. Like, they're not going to let a kid in with a 2.5. If they do, it's like one kid a year for football. So, your grades matter. And what people don't understand is that you could have an A in phys ed, an A in art, an A in youth and law, a B in all your Englishes, and like C's and D's and everything else, and you're a non-qualifier. Because what they do is they back out your non-core courses, take only your 10 core courses, and reconfigure your GPA in the 10 core courses. So I tell kids, like, listen, C's and D's are death, so you have to have more A's and B's and C's, and no D's and no F's. If you have a D, they better be mostly A's and B's, because the numbers won't work out when you reconfigure the core.
I feel like a lot of kids do not know that at all.
Yeah, and so like, for example, the Interscholastic League allows you to have under 2.0. I'm like, well, that's not good, because a lot of those kids aren't going to qualify academically to play collegiate ball of any level.
You think they should just raise it?
It's a fine line, because the problem is a lot of young freshmen don't realize what bad is sometimes, because they're young and they're mature and they make mistakes, and high school's a whole new level from middle school. So it's hard. So some kids like do make some mistakes and get like a 1.9 or a 2.0, and then they get maybe like a 2.3 their sophomore year, but then by the time they figure it out, you got 2 years of not great grades, and they're trying to like reinvent the wheel in a short span of time.
Someone like that, do you think they should go the JUCO prep route, or they should just go to D3, since you guys can kind of take those kids, you said, right?
To some percentage, we can take very few of them. So for us, like I tell people all the time, at the end of the day, like people will say, well, D3 can be expensive because it's not full scholarships like FBS and FCS. I say, well, that depends. If you got great grades, you're going to go for very inexpensive. I mean, not every time you go for free, but like you're going to go for a very reasonable price. Even kids going FCS are paying money. A lot of FCSs, I would say less than half the kids going FCS on scholarship are getting a full ride. A good chunk of them are getting, like, for football money, they're probably getting 50% football money, and then they're stacking academic or need-based on top of it in their package. So there's many, many kids going, say, for example, like a Bryant or Sacred Heart, which the cost of school is more expensive. There's obviously kids on full rides there, but then there's some kids that are paying 20, 30 grand out of pocket after football money and academic money or need-based money.
Still a lot.
So like, that same kid sometimes could come to us technically money in, money out cheaper. It does happen. But they want to play at D1, so they go D1. So, and sometimes they don't want to play D1. They say, you know what? I'd like to be able to go have a pizza on a Friday night. So
why would you go the JUCO prep route?
Well, the JUCO prep route, like, let's say you're a really good student, but you're like borderline Ivy League. So you might go to a prep school for a PG year to try to qualify for an Ivy League the next year. So they might retake their. Now, a lot of schools do SAT optional now, but if you want to get an Ivy League, if you're going to use the SATs, you want to get a crazy good score. So you might go to prep school and prep one of your classes in prep schools to prep for the SAT to like go from a 1250 to a 1400, let's say. And so that could be the difference of getting in or not getting into an Ivy League.
Gotcha.
So like it's like those little check the boxes. So like that's a reason. prep only replaces one grade now for PGing. Now, there's a date your senior year. I forget the date. I have to look at the exact date. It changes year to year, but it's usually in October, where if you don't hit the qualifying number for FCS or D2, you can't hit the rest of the year. Like, it doesn't count. So if they do hit the rest of the year, then they might have to go to prep school to like continue hitting it because they have to wait a year because they didn't hit it on that date. There's like a date by the eligibility center. So that's another reason they would do that. But, JUCO is really, some kids go JUCO, they just don't get an offer. It's sometimes not grades. It's just, there's only so many. There's 129 FBS schools, 125 FCS. And there's FBS is 85 full scholarships per school. FCS is up to equivalency, which means like the dollar amount of a full scholarship. 63 of them is the ceiling. Not every league has the ceiling. Some have like 50, some have even less. The Ivy League has none. It's all need based like D3. The Patriot League, most of the schools have like athletics money now. Georgetown didn't for a long time. I think they might now. So like all 125 don't have the full 63. So, they can cut them up in different denominations. And then you go to D2. D2 has a ceiling of 36, which isn't very many, but then more than half those programs don't even have the full 36. Like, for example, Southern Connecticut has like 8.5 or 9, I think is the number that the head coach told me. So, 9 scholarships divided by 85 kids doesn't go very far.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, go back to things players should do you think a thing players should do is reach out to coaches, like do like a Josh Allen and just mass email coaches to get their name out there?
I think when they're like going into their junior year, if they've started, so like I tell kids, if you've never played varsity and you've never started, like you can email the schools to get into their like schools database for like admissions, which isn't a bad thing. But like no coach is going to really, let's say they've seen you at a camp, they like you, they're not going to listen to our kids who never played varsity because we're trying to get like the elite of the varsity. So you haven't played varsity yet. So that's kind of a weird conversation. I had actually a conversation with somebody, with a coach driving up here actually today. So, and he didn't really understand like why these FBS guys were randomly offered like an 8th grader. And I said, well, because that 8th grader is built like a giant.
Yeah.
He's 14 years old and he's 6'5". Like that's not normal. And so, that's like the anomaly. And so like you don't want to be the guy that didn't like find that kid early, so to speak. So it's like sales 101. You don't want to be late to the party.
Yeah. So, actually, one person we can think about that, he left Hendricken to go to school in Florida, Nashon Montgomery. He's kind of like that. He left Hendricken freshman year and Rising sophomore, and then blew up after that camp.
Yeah, and I think he would have blown up. I think he would have blown up, no matter if he stayed at Hendricken or not. I think because he, I mean, Hendricken does a great job athletically, obviously, but the bigger thing is academically. So like they're selling like a lifestyle as far as like how you're developing as a person, and obviously football's part of it, and that helps. But like at the end of the day, like they're developing the well-rounded person, no matter if it's the arts, sciences, and obviously kids also play football. I mean, the Hendricken kids we have are also great people, and no different than LaSalle. The LaSalle kids we have are great people. Like, they're both good schools. I mean, and there are many public schools that do a very good job too, and some don't. And so I mean, again, it depends on the climate, depends on the school, and so I mean, obviously they've had a lot of success at Hendricken and LaSalle, and Hendricken. If you look at the last 12 years, have won more state titles than LaSalle. They've also been very close games, most of them.
Just speaking of Hendricken and LaSalle, as a college recruiting coach, I've got to discussions with people about this before. If you have a kid who is really good at Hendricken or really good at a public school in Rhode Island, where are you more prone to, like you said, good public schools is bad public schools, but is the kid from Hendricken going to be on your radar before the kid from a public school?
Yes and no. I mean, it comes down to the school and the coaches. So like some coaches in public schools are great coaches, right? And they market their kids hard, and they do right by their kids, and they're tremendous. And we have great relationships with those coaches. And then some public school coaches are not as attention to detail recruiting because their philosophy is they're there to coach, and that's okay, and that's just their ideology. And so I don't hate them for it. It's just how they're doing business. And so I'll call them and say, hey, who do you have? And they'll say, we have somebody, or we don't have anyone, or everything in between. And I'll look myself, and they might not. And so, but, and then other coaches in public schools are great coaches, and they're hardcore workers. Like Stanley Dunbar's a great coach. And, the guy who just retired at Portsmouth, Dustin's a great guy. And the guy, Sandy at Barrington's a great guy. And, I can rattle off the names. I mean, Mike at Central is really producing a lot of players. And Coach McCall at Classical is producing a lot of players, and he's produced like some great student athletes.
Yeah, Marquise Buchanan over there.
And Sam Badu.
Sam Badu. Shout out to Sam Badu.
We've had a bunch of we don't have any classical kids on roster this year, but we had one of our last captains 2 years ago. Sean Reel was an unbelievable DN, great student. He was a classical kid. We had Gage, was one of our offensive linemen. He was a classical kid. Gahey was a freshman. He decided to stop playing football because he just realized how good D3 was, and he didn't really want to wait to be the guy. But he's still a great kid, and I love the world of him. I wish he had stayed. And some kids just decide, college football is not for them. And so
I guess my question was, the kid going into high school, I'm really good. Should I go to Hendricken opposed to a classical or a central? Is that really a thing?
I think it depends on, it depends on what you like, because when you're going to Hendricken or LaSalle, it's a Catholic school. So like, do you want a Catholic curriculum, right? So like, because they are going to teach Catholicism, they're going to teach theology classes, and that's kind of like their ideology. Like that's what they do. So do you want that? And some kids want that, and some kids don't. Like the quarterback that went and played at Duke, I think he was Jewish, and he went to classical because it's a great public school, good coach, good situation. He got to Duke. So like, I think it really depends on every kid's individual situation, right? Like my middle daughter, she's my stepdaughter. She's still my daughter, me and my wife's middle daughter. She's a really good women's ice hockey player. And she was thinking about obviously Hendricken doesn't have any females there, so that doesn't count. We said, hey, would you want to go to LaSalle? We offered her whatever she wanted to do in high school. We didn't force her either way. In prep school, LaSalle, Bayview, public, And so there was a pathways program at Pano. Well, I'm thinking Pano, we live in West Florida. What the heck?
Yeah.
And so it was just a random, she came up with not even us. And so there was a business program she wanted to do at Pano. And so I said, well, Kelsey, you really want to go to Pano? And so it was like, nothing against Pano. That's what she chose.
Yeah.
And so we didn't even, I said, as long as, my biggest thing wasn't even the athletics. It was about school. I said, I don't care if you go to Europe and for school. At the end of the day, you got to go to a good school, get a good education, have a good environment. And so she chose there. And so she toured LaSalle and she liked LaSalle. And the thing is, she didn't like the uniform. She doesn't wear skirts.
Yeah.
And so
she's like, nope.
It was so weird. I was like, really? And so, in beautiful place. And I like LaSalle, and if they had a girls program, I like Hendricken, but it's all boys. So,
yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's really, I guess, and you see what Central's got cool alternate uniforms, and Mike has a great relationship with those kids, and
fire, and
the kids love it, right? So I think it really fits what that end of really I think kids are just, it comes down to the kid, right? And because I remember hearing people when a lot of kids would go into Central, why would they go there? I'm like, because they feel like that's their fit.
They're fit for sure, and 100% understand what you're saying. I'm just saying I guess I'm talking about the top level athlete. I'm going to get a D1 scholarship. Is it really going to affect you? Is it really going to affect that player? He's the most known player out of Rhode Island since for a while. Quiddy. If Quiddy went to Shea or Tolman, would he still have gone to the Michigan level if he didn't go to Hendricken? Or is Hendricken the spot to go to if you're trying to get recruited?
I think it depends on the kid. Hendricken does a very good job marketing their kids to colleges. Keith does a great job. Him and his dad are good. Buddy's kind of behind the scenes, they're unsaid DFO, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they're great people. Those guys are great. And I think they all, there's a lot of really good coaches in Rhode Island. And I think the schools have to give them more. I've said this across the board. I've been around the country recruiting. I've been to other states. And I said, it's hard when you live in this bubble and you don't go to other, I have the luxury to go see different schools down in Florida, Louisiana. I do go down there in pockets. And no, obviously I spend most of my time in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and a little bit in Mass. But in Jersey, New York a little bit. I get to see how everybody does business. It's kind of interesting. So, I say we as a state, and I'm a Rhode Island guy, so I love Rhode Island kids, and I love Rhode Island people. We got to realize we got to start evolving a little bit more. And so that's tough when no one likes change. And I'm included. I was not a big Twitter guy, and all the young coaches you gotta be on Twitter, coach. And so now I'm on Twitter, and I love it. But I was not a big Twitter guy.
At first, like, whoa.
I was like, when am I going to tweet like, I'm going to the bathroom? Like, so, I mean, I think, I think everybody says like coaching stipends, right? And no one's going to make millions off of coaching high school football. That's not real. But like, they spend a lot more time than people realize to do what they need to do business. These guys work a lot of hours, these high school coaches. And these people don't realize what they actually do. I would love to do like a Last Chance U version of a day-to-day high school football schedule year-round.
Yeah.
I think it would blow the people's minds here in New England, especially Rhode Island.
100%.
So I think, because eons ago, when I was playing high school ball and dinosaurs were walking the earth, most of the coaches, I would say more than 67%, were either administrators or teachers in the building. And so the reason they had a stipend to coach was like it was an add-on, because they already had a full-time salary and job, technically. And so they would weave into their football stuff into the day. You wind the clocks forward, and there's a lot more guys that are actually not teachers in the building being coaches. They may be teachers somewhere else, but not in the actual building their kids are in, right? So now they have to do more than the guy that was like a teacher in the building 20 years, 30 years ago, because they're not in the building. And back then, a lot of their staff was in the building too. So it wasn't just that one guy, it was like their whole staff. So, I think back when I played at Westerly, our head coaches then, they're all in the building. Half the assistants were all in the building. So, and the rest that weren't in the building were very well-to-do business owners. They were older, were established, that had the financial flexibility to do football at high school almost like they were full-time. And that's very rare now. So, to make it long story short, I've heard these numbers thrown around like 3,400 for a head coach or like 5,000 head coach. If you did the number of hours, not even the weightlifting, not like the off-season stuff, just practice, film, locker room management, and game day, and travel for game day, you're going to far exceed minimum wage.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, so like at the end of the day, and like everybody's like, oh no, don't say that. Like, it's just the truth. It's numbers. So if you want to get better, like this is a philosophy I learned from a lot of really smart coaches. It's this phrase of either getting better or getting worse. You're never the same, right? So you're always trying to like do self-scout of yourself. What are you doing to be better? And then like doing it. And so good people in business, good people in like anything, athletics, coaching, you're always trying to get, like you hear Brady say, I got to get 1% better every day. And that means like everything. Like if you look at what you did last year, you should always spend a little bit more. Not that you want to be spending money here, there, and everywhere, but like there should be a build out, steps forward, never backwards. So, and that's in every facet, from coaches' ability to players' ability to infrastructure to pay to getting more people that are not coaches to help out to like you name it. If you have that build out if you take a step forward in every phase of that program, how much better are they going to be?
Yeah.
And so sure. Like you look at like, so here's my example. Like, okay, what's the deal with the privates? And so everybody says, well, they have more money. Yes and no. I mean, so the cities and towns are on fixed budgets because of like tax money. So they do have some ability to bring in some revenue outside of it with fundraising. But, look at Henrican. If you saw Henrican 20-something years ago, they didn't have field turf. They didn't have a video board. They didn't have all that stuff. And now they have a video board in the end zone, and they have field turf, and they have food trucks at games. And same thing with LaSalle. LaSalle's setup is way different now. They built a brand new weight room, new field. Like,
first of all, it was nice when I was in high school, and it got better since I was in high school.
So you look at that and go, how many towns and cities in Rhode Island have that somewhat percentage of transformation? How many? A couple? Not many. NK.
Handful.
East Greenwich. They both have all new stuff. So when you look at it and you go, Wesley redid their stands and their press box, but not the field. You look at it and go, number one, it's business. You got to keep up with the Joneses. So that's the thing. Like, I think people have to realize, like, we have to invest. And when I bring this up, I get the pushback is like, well, we can't take money away from like teachers in English class. I'm like, I didn't say that. I'm saying is, we as a society, I don't like my daughter goes to Pano. I will never. And then my dad was the same way. My dad didn't have any kids in Wesley for like 20-something years. And my dad, before he passed away, always voted for stuff for the schools. Because he got it. He played college athletics. He was on the scholarship playing basketball in college. My Uncle Mike played at BC. My two cousins, one played at Notre Dame, one played at Syracuse. They both played in the NFL after. I did not get their height, unfortunately. But like literally, they understood the value of education, the value of like infrastructure for kids and schools and teachers. I think it's sad as a society, and it's tough because I know tax money doesn't go as far. Education is important, and facilities, and it's the broken window theory. You learn it. I get my bachelor's and master's in criminal justice, and it's a broken window theory. If things are broken, people don't really value it anymore, and so, and that it trickles down to like apathy and how people act. So it's very important as a society, the public, even if your kids aren't in school there anymore, support your schools. Really,
for sure.
In your voting, in your tax dollars, it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why down south, the public schools are better than the private schools a lot of these times because, like Dunbar said, like you're saying right now, the infrastructure for high school football just isn't there. So basically what you're saying is like if they are the top tier talent, the infrastructure does need to be better for public schools to make it to the next level. It helps. There's the outliers every now and then from public schools, but that's why these kids are picking Hendrick and LaSalle to get recruited. That's when their mindset. So they think football's in their mind. That's why these kids are going to Hendrick and LaSalle because they're thinking the only way to get out of Rhode Island is to go to Henry or LaSalle.
And that's not 100% true. It definitely they've had a bigger volume of kids going on, but they're individual kids. Like there's a kid that played at Shea, who went and played at Duquesne, who was in the league with the Pittsburgh Steelers, DeBrito. And so he got caught, but he was really close to making it. He was in the last round of cuts. And he's still trying to get back to the league. It's hard to be in the league. And so, it has to do with like health and a million factors. You can have one pull and really be an NFL player, but then not make it because you can't show out further during camp, and then you get cut. So like, that's why people want to be a first round draft pick because there's protections in the collective bargaining agreement for those draft picks to not get cut unless you hit negative check the boxes. And there's lesser protections in the second round and so on and so forth. So other than money, that's a real reason they want to be drafted in those first two rounds. So what I'm saying is like, how many kids from Henrican was in the last cut with the Steelers?
Yeah.
Other than Quiddy Pay making it the last couple of years, no one else right now. I feel that the Trust kid within the next 2 years definitely will probably be there. I'd be shocked if he wasn't because he's got a lot to check the boxes, and he's developed so rapidly. His game from high school to now at Georgia is so amazingly. His transformation is amazing. So like obviously they have elite coaches, but he's a really put together kid, and so kudos to mom and dad, kudos to the Georgia coaches, kudos to even the Henrican guys. So he's got the frame, he's got a lot to check the box to be an NFL starting lineman. So. And he proved it Monday night. So, and he still has eligibility technically.
So you gotta boiling it all down to really kind of all depends on the player. The player, how much they put into it.
Some kids might
high school factoring.
Some kids go to Henrican and they may not fit, and that's okay. There's a lot of kids that go to UMass Dartmouth and don't fit. It happens, and so it's nothing against the publics or the privates. It's just what's your fit one. And the other thing I say, I say to a lot of people, I said, listen. If our place was a dump, people wouldn't even look at our place. At the end of the day, you're selling because of like pathways and because of like, there's a lot of push in the conservative world to go to like vouchers, and hasn't happened here in Rhode Island, but in other parts of the country, you hear these stories, and there's pros and cons of that. Trust me, it's not a perfect science, and so it's like, would you want that world? I don't know. So. I think at the end of the day, there should be a certain standard there's a standard of like what you have to give a kid for academic like classes and teaching and things of that nature. But there should be an overall wraparound of standard that's better than whatever the basement is allegedly of what these schools physically should look like.
Yeah.
I know there's like a minimum like you can have for like the max amount of kids you can have in a class and all that jazz. But I'm saying deeper like facilities, they were looking at, I remember when the COVID thing hit and they were looking at like, air filtration system in schools. The number of schools that failed in Rhode Island were like astronomical. And like you think of it like I remember as a kid, I was thinking back, and Wesley High School, very few parts of the school had AC. When I got to college at Salve, for example, all the classrooms had AC. Let me tell you, I was way more focused in AC classrooms with 90 out than I was in Wesley High School.
Oh, for sure.
And so a lot of these schools are looking at that stuff now, going, "Wait a minute." If you have a trigger where if you get hot, like really heated, so to speak, from the heat, and that kid like has a bad day at the office, he might not have a good day in the classroom.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so like that could affect classroom management and behavior issues. And so there's something to be said about the facility and the infrastructure to affect the classroom production. And so, and then the kids want to be there. Kids want to go to a nice place for school.
Yeah.
I would love to see the before and after numbers of, like, say, East Providence High School, the old high school, new high school, or what they're going to build in Pawtucket.
I'm very intrigued on that.
That would be a very interesting, like, scientific, like, analysis.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, what's your day-to-day attendance percentage rate? What's your, like, quality of, like, behavior issues? What's, like, all that stuff? School pride.
Yeah, because Pawtucket's definitely getting a real upgrade with that.
Yeah.
And so I know one question I've been answered before. So players should be reaching out to coaches.
Yeah, I tell players you should always have your most up-to-date transcript handy, because I'm going to ask for that all the time. Always have your highlight film ready to go.
If you're a varsity player, if you're going to your junior year and playing varsity, you have varsity T, reach out. Transcripts, film. Yeah. How long should, like, your film highlight be? Should it, like, is there a certain time? Or
so it should be between 3 to 5 minutes. And I tell people the first 5 to 10 plays should be the most pop plays where, like, people go, whoa, like, it jumps off the paper, so to speak. I don't want to see a play of you, like, getting a regular everyday tackle on play 1 through 5, because I'm like, okay, well, where's the excitement here?
Are you're going to stop immediately next one?
Well, I mean, if he's got crazy numbers to go with it, I'm like, okay, let's look more. But, like, numbers can be skewed. A lot of guys just, like, throw numbers, and I feel like some of these max press numbers, I've seen them where, like, oh, Johnny has 2,000 yards rushing, and I look and they're like 3 and 7. I'm going, how?
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense for sure.
Math doesn't lie.
And when they're reaching out, how are they composing the message, and their grammar, is that key as well?
Well, I mean, if the kid's driving, he's doing voice to talk, that can mess it up. So, like, if one text message is kind of weird, I don't get too upset. But when it's like 4 or 5, then I'll just ask him, hey, we have Bluetooth now. Do you like that text to talk stuff? Yeah, coach, because I can't. And then so I'm like, okay, well, I get that's not him. That's the text to talk message.
Yeah.
But like, I'm like, hey, are you at home? Yeah, and I'm just texting you, coach. I'm like, okay, well, we need to work on this English stuff.
Yeah.
So
would that deter you away from?
It could. It won't totally turn me off, but it could be like, okay, like, what does English classes look like?
Yeah, for sure.
And so, but like, if his English grade's like lights out good, then I'm like, well, then maybe he just does this like weird like shorthand texting, so to speak.
Yeah. But it'd be preferred to be professional as possibly can.
You want a kid to be very presentable. I mean, that's like the ideal.
Gotcha. For sure. I mean, kind of wrapping up with this podcast, what should we expect from Coach McCormack into 2023 and UMass Dartmouth upcoming season? I mean, we're gonna, players to look out for as well.
I mean, obviously we're looking, and on a roster we have 35 Rhode Islanders. We will probably have close to low 40s next year on the roster, roughly, because some kids are going to graduate, and a couple of kids have kind of moved on from the program, which happens. It happens at every program. But for the most part, we're keeping a nucleus of Rhode Island kids, and so you'll see a lot of Rhode Island kids out there playing, and you'll see obviously a lot of Connecticut. We have 2 really good Florida kids. We have an awesome Louisiana kid. And we have a really good young Maine defensive lineman. We have a couple of New Hampshire kids. Obviously we have a lot of Mass kids. We're in Mass. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're going to probably be the most energetic team you've ever seen, and we're very exciting what we do on offense and defense. And I think, I think we're very transparent. I mean, I am who I am. I'm not any different home or away. Sure. People don't understand, like, the reason I can do what I do is, like, my whole family is all in. My oldest daughter's a filmer at UMass.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so she's one of our top filmers, and then my wife's all in. So, like, during COVID, we built a $30,000 football office in my basement.
Oh, wow.
So people see it online, they think it's actually like a professional office. They don't realize it's in my house. So what happened was during COVID, and she was the one that said we're doing this, which was kind of crazy. It wasn't even me. She was like, I was like working from home on my kitchen table. I didn't have an office then in the house. And so we were like not really allowed on campus. In the beginning, it was like really they sent all the kids home. It was really weird. And so, the kitchen table became pretty brutal. At one point in my dining room, I had like whiteboards on the walls, like with my like functional recruiting board with like little magnets of guys' names by position. And finally, it wasn't even like, my wife wasn't mad about it. She was like, yeah, this isn't very functional. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you need a better space. And so the next thing you know, she found like some D1 guy who had like a football. I don't know if it was like Nick Saban or somebody big time. And so she's just like, the interest rates are really low to refinance your houses. And we have really good credit and we've lived in our house forever. And so she was like, she like designed it.
That's cool.
So she like literally, so imagine your wife going, you know, everybody else says to us we're crazy. And so my wife's like, we're going to build a football office. I'm like, stop it. And so she's like, no, I have a design. And
you're like, I love you even more now.
So, and she loves it. She's like, it's like literally it's a real football office. You know, our 80-inch flat screen in the film room side, we can simulcast from our laptops.
Nice.
It's got a 6 foot by 4 foot like huge desk.
So you're all in for this year going forward.
But we built that in 2020. So that was like a big ramp up because like it's all soundproofed. It's crazy. So, you know, I have another board that has electronic that can connect our front rush to and stuff, and I can like, it's a big thing. So we can have people over and like watch it and stuff. And
that's cool.
So we were able to do like crazy football all the time. You know, I was doing like webcam meetings with recruits. I was, you know, using Google Meets and Zoom and all that stuff.
All in.
So that was a big help, I'll be honest, because people thought we were nuts. So
I mean, it's proofs in the pudding. I mean, you guys back-to-back champions. Like I said before, any expectations for the season? Like, what's your thoughts now coming off the 2022 Mascot champions?
We always say, and our OC's really like, he's really like attuned to like personal development and the stuff with our kids. He's a really great coach. He's brilliant. Josh is brilliant. So he's like, he said to the guys, he's like, every year is different. He's like, world beat us the year before. If we don't take a step forward, people are going to catch you. So, and it's back to that mentality, either getting better or getting worse. And the kids have really lived this. So they were the ones that went from year 1 to year 2 to really ramp it up. Now, we obviously had more players come in that were very good, like Angel Sanchez and kids like that. And we have a kid that his nickname is Smoke. It's funny. He's really fast. He's Dan Hassan from Providence.
He was on too.
He's a great edge rusher, and Hassan's a great kid. It's another great story where he, you know, his fit was us and our fit was him. And so he loves it here and we love him. And, you know, he had a great first year with us and he was a great upgrade to add to the pass rush room and go get those quarterbacks and hunt them down. And so, and kids like that. And then we had just CJ Waite, Jacob Gibbons, like a lot of great kids came in from all parts of Rhode Island. So, and they bought into, we have our mentality we call win the rep. And it means, you know, everything you do, you got to win those individual reps. And if you do that, it's going to add up to success. And the kids have really lived it and raised the bar. And so our OC always says, you got to be more player, you know, obviously your coaches are driving you and giving the parameters of what we would need to go. But teams are more player driven and player like accountability is what wins.
I would definitely agree with that.
So, you know, our kids have a lot of like buy into what we do. Like we really look at our players' abilities and more for offense and defense year to year to who we have and who our opponents are and what our skill sets are. And the coordinators are, I mean, even, you know, our also special teams coordinator, Ryan Struthers, does a great job. You know, Steve Faneuil's our DC and Josh our OC and our head coach is great. They just, we have all been offered jobs to leave and we don't leave. And the reason we don't leave is because it's a tight-knit family of great kids, great coaches. We're all like, people probably think we're nuts. We're all on the same page, and it's like one big family, and we all get it. And
sometimes that means more than money.
Yeah, I mean, I had this conversation. My buddy was at he was at UConn at the time, and now he's at Rutgers. And Eddie Allen, he's a great coach, a special teams guy. And he said, Ryan, I'm gonna tell you something. Money doesn't matter. Level doesn't matter. If you're in a good situation, it's gold.
Yeah. If
you have a good relationship with your coaches, you're all gonna work hard. No matter where you go. College football is a grind, and so no matter what level it is, it's just work, and it's not easy. It's tough on people's families and tough on people's wives, and you know, you miss a lot of like milestones because you have to do certain things. I'm just blessed that the family structure, my kids, my wife, that my parents at the time, now my dad's dead, and my in-laws, they're all in. So like, and our coaches' families are all in. So we're, you know, people probably think we're nuts. So
yeah. Speaking of all that, so you're grateful for all that. So
yeah.
Well, one last wrap up. So who do you want to give any shout outs to who put you in the position you are now?
I mean, going into coaching to start coaching 24 years ago, you know, Coach Cohen and Coach Bell, they were the ones that hired me and started my whole, and they recruited me out of high school at Salve. And then our current staff, Coach Robichaud, Coach Sylvester, Coach Struthers, you know, Coach Faneuil, Coach Borden, Coach McCann, Coach Brown, you know, Coach Gendron, our whole entire staff, they're awesome, man. We've all been offered like higher level jobs, and we go right to the wire and say, you know what? I'm not leaving, man. It's like that clip in The Wolf of Wall Street.
One of my favorite movies.
We always joke around there about that. When the guy decides not to leave, we just play that on our group me, that quick clip, and we just laugh, and the kids laugh, and and our kids have been offered to leave, and the reason they stay is because they go, you know what? I freaking love each other here.
Yeah, building something special.
And so, that's the thing. It's like, I think, and I'm not saying like, everybody says, well, you're just biased. So, well, kind of am, yeah. But you can see what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, you guys had that turnaround for sure. And, like you said, back-to-back champions. When Angel came on, he said expect big things in the offense. Hassan was, can't wait for next season. You're prepared for next season as well. Excited. Make sure you definitely check out UMass Dartmouth and Dartmouth, obviously. Check out their games. They have a high-powered offense. Their defense is legit as well. Make sure you follow my guy, Ryan P. McCormack on Instagram. Any last words do you want to say for the podcast?
Well, no one recruits Rhode Island like us.
No one recruits Rhode Island. No one recruits Rhode Island like UMass Dartmouth. So, he said, reach out to coaches, get that film ready, 3 to 5 minutes, proper grammar. And, just be smart on social media. There's, Rhode Island's building up, and I want to keep building Rhode Island football. If you guys enjoy this podcast, definitely reach out to me, reach out to Coach McCormack. And, there's big things coming from Rhode Island and big things coming from UMass Dartmouth this upcoming season. Make sure you follow your boy, EG Pot of Thunder, on all social media, X4FF on all social media as well. And thank you for coming and giving me some of your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
For sure, you're welcome. Make sure you follow everybody. Like I just said, let's get it, baby.
Yeah, and it's tough, though. The problem with